Welcome to Mavens of Data. This week we're speaking with Nick Singh, best-selling author of Ace the Data Science Interview and founder of Data Lemur. By the end, listeners were asking for Nick to do an encore episode. Here he covered common interview mistakes, we did a mock interview case study with in-depth discussion around it, how to think about tailoring your About Me, and how he's used portfolio projects, why they're powerful, and how to best showcase them. Hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nick. I'm so excited to have you here. If we want to just dive right in, for the people who don't know you, could you share a little bit about your background and how you became passionate about analytics?
Yeah, I started out studying systems engineering and computer science at UVA, the University of Virginia, and we didn't have a word for data science and data analytics really back then. I guess data analytics was a thing, but not really data science. But I liked math, I liked business, I liked using data to understand how to improve businesses, and that's kind of what led me to my first job at Facebook on their growth engineering team. Then I worked at a data as a services startup called SafeGraph out in Silicon Valley, and that was really cool. We did really cool geospatial data about how people moved around the world, what stores they visited. Of course, it was anonymized and aggregated, but that kind of retail insights into how many people are visiting what kind of stores suddenly became very relevant during COVID. So I got to do a lot of data journalism work there and got to share about these data-driven insights around how people are shopping in person, and got to share that with New York Times, CNN, NPR, Fox News. So that was really cool. And this was in the peak of COVID, right? And I had a really great career in data up till then, but I wanted to give back because a lot of my friends were losing their jobs, having their offers rescinded. Times were tough back in 2020 summer. So I partnered up with my friend who's an ex-Facebook data scientist, Kevin Huo. We wrote the book Ace the Data Science Interview. We went on to sell 40,000 copies and be a best-selling book on Amazon. We're still the number one best-selling data science book on Amazon even today. And then I also started datalemur.com. It's a free way to practice SQL and prep for SQL interviews. We have over 200,000 users in 106 countries. And, these days, it's not just about, finding insights with data, it's just helping people get to that level as well. And that's kind of what brought me here, not just the technical skills, but just also trying to give back and help people with their own careers.
Oh my God, what an interesting journey, and congrats so much on the success of the book. I didn't realize that you had sold 40,000 copies. That's awesome. Congrats.
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, luckily we've had it for a few years, so it's definitely not an overnight bestseller, but it's been doing well. And maybe there'll be a second edition. Who knows?
Ooh.
Who knows?
Awesome. Okay, so to dive right in, what are the most common mistakes you see when, in the analyst interview?
Yeah, so I see tons of mistakes during these interview processes. Let me talk about a few common ones. The first one is, let's break it down. Let's start with technical stuff, then we'll talk about behavioral later. Because when it comes to technical interviews for SQL, I see people who code too slowly and they don't understand the bar at some of these top companies. So for a lot of people, they think they know SQL, but that means they took a course on it over a week or a weekend and haven't really had to sit there and grind out a lot of SQL queries. So there is a world of difference between, I took a crash course, or I vaguely know the syntax. Select something, where something, from something. And there's a big difference between that and actually being able to sit on a real world interview question that uses real world data where you have to write out 2 or 3 queries in 20, 30 minutes and make them run. And even if they don't run, because not every company is giving it in a CoderPad, CodeSignal, HackerRank. Not every company is creating an interactive platform to make you run the queries. But still, there's a world of difference between being able to describe your SQL query over the phone and actually sitting there and typing it out, even if it's on a Google Doc. You'll see people have this gap. So that's one of the big mistakes, that people think they know SQL, but they don't understand the level of Facebook, Amazon, Disney Plus, CVS Health. They will ask you a real SQL interview question and make you code it up. And then the other big piece of it is that now here in 2025, people say, okay, Nick, that was correct advice in 22 and 23 before we had GPT 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know what number we're on. But the point is, people still underestimate this part because they're like, well, AI can do it. And what I found actually quite interesting, Kristen, is that even in 2025, even at companies that are at the forefront of AI, they are still making their data analysts and data scientists and data engineers do a first round SQL interview. Like this is still the case at Meta, even though they have these open source llama models and they're at the cutting edge of LLMs, they're doing it. Google, even though they've got Gemini, for their own data analysts and data scientists, they're still asking SQL. So that should tell folks something, that even the companies that are building these things are asking interviews. I actually helped a senior manager interview at Anthropic. For those who don't know, Anthropic makes Claude, which is one of the chief competitors to ChatGPT. And she, in her interview process, even though she was like a quite senior level manager, they asked her a SQL interview question, like write SQL using in BigQuery, write a SQL query as part of an interview, because they wanted managers at Anthropic to be quite technical. So it's really surprising that you would think like these AI cutting edge AI companies would be the first ones to not ask SQL interviews, but in essence, it's exactly the opposite. So that's like another big common mistake I've seen. And then another big area of mistakes I've seen, and we can kind of dive into this a little bit more, is for these open-ended questions, it's not that I see one mistake, but I just see like hundreds of different mistakes happen. And people just imagine that there's no correct answer and there's no way to prepare. But there are ways to prepare for these open-ended questions. And sure, there's not one singular correct answer, but for sure there are wrong answers. Kristen, maybe we could do a little bit of that together to give a demo. Would that be cool?
I'm sure you can tell by my face how unprepared I feel.
No,
but
it's
sure.
okay. We'll make it a conversation. We'll talk about some real world type thing called Facebook dating. So imagine Facebook is trying to launch a dating app called Facebook Dating. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they're launching it as a beta test in Brazil. And they've got a few months of data, right? Because you don't want to try out this app to the whole world. You're just trying it out in Brazil for a few months.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to come back and see, was this app
Successful.
good or not? Was it successful or not? You know, what are some metrics you'd look at? So Kristen, you can see why this is like a good question to ask, because it's pretty real world. I'm sure you've had to do something like this in your past job and just figure out like, is this a good thing to do or not? Right.
Yep.
Because these PMs come up with so many ideas. These business folks, they come up with so many ideas. So, you know, you can only test a few of them. And even when you test it, you got to have some success criteria to say, you know what? This is good. We should spread this app to the rest of the world, to the rest of Latin America. Or Zuckerberg could look at the metrics and say, hey, you know what? This is not quite working well. You guys keep iterating, or you guys try something else, or you know what? We're laying you off. You guys didn't do a good job, right? So what metrics should Mr. Zuckerberg be looking at, right? Like that's the question. We're not even trying to say, are the metrics high or bad? We're just trying to say, like, what would you show Mr. Zuckerberg? A few things, like what would you show him? I mean, do you have any ideas of what would be, you know, there's a lot of right answers here. So I'm just curious, do you have an idea or two of what you'd want to show Zuck?
So without thinking, the first things that come to mind are the number of signups. Did people actually log in and use the app after sign up? Because I know that there's typically like a drop off there.
Right.
You know, if I had access to the amount of time people are spending on the app, I'd want to know. I'd want to know how many people are actually reaching out to others and making connections. Because if there's no connections happening, that's not, and how many connections are being accepted. And then I don't have an intuitive sense, because I literally haven't thought about it, of, you know, what sort of granularity of data we might have and how deeply that could go. But also, like, an interesting metric I'd want to know is, you know, what's the gender split of the people? Like, are there enough women to meet the men? And I don't know if I completely bombed this, but I would love to
that's
take it from here.
No. This is a really strong first answer. And like, Kristen did a lot of good things, and we'll talk about that. No, you nailed a lot of these things. For example, you mentioned time spent. Like, that is definitely a core metric that Facebook is looking at. Like, if people aren't spending time on your app, like, we're not doing much of anything. Same way, if people aren't just logging in and using the app, or like logging in frequently enough, even if your app is like magic and gold, if someone looks at your dating app once a month, like you're not getting anywhere. So we might look at something like daily active usage or daily active users. We might look at, average time spent per day or per week. But Kristen, you nailed a few other parts of it too, which is it's not enough to just log in or see it. You want people to be doing dating, right? Like you want people to be connecting with each other. You want people to be messaging each other, getting matches. And this is one part, Kristen, you nailed that a lot of people forget and they miss. They talk about high level things like revenue and time spent, and they forget those downstream metrics. Like if people aren't even making matches or like meeting with each other, it doesn't matter if they're just looking at it idly for 20 minutes. Like the app's not really working well. And conversely, if you're spending, a minute a day on the app, which is not that much time, but you're getting like 4 matches a day. Sure, we might have some problems somewhere, but like that's kind of sick if you're getting 4 matches a day. I don't know. I'm engaged right now, so I haven't been on the dating apps in a few years. I met my fiance actually through Hinge, which is a dating app, kind of like, yeah. So I met her through Hinge. So, I haven't been on Hinge, but getting matches is not easy. So you can even juice up your time spent and daily active usage message and just not get any matches. And that's kind of an unsuccessful dating app. A few other interesting things about an open-ended question like this. So as I mentioned, there's no right or wrong answers, but a mistake people will do is kind of be first off, one big mistake people will make on these kind of metrics questions is, they will give you like lagging answers. Because remember, we only have a few months of data. So they would like say the ultimate measure of success is if 2 people got married, okay, from the app. So I tell people like, look, I don't know about you, but it takes a little time to go from matched on an app to married, right? And Zuckerberg, it takes a few years. And Zuckerberg's not going to be like, hey, you know what? Your team, you just keep working. We'll check back in a few years to see if people got married. You know what I mean? You don't have a few years to report if your app is successful or not. And even then, Kristen, how are we going to figure out if people are married? Right? Like, let's say I gave you a few years to check it out. How would I even know if 2 people got married? Like, is that even data we can really collect that easily? Right? Because right, because by the time you're even at that level, like you're probably off the app for months and you're going steady with somebody. And then maybe another 6 months or a year later, you get engaged and then you get married, right? Like, so you're long gone from the app. And the app, like I haven't had Hinge, like, we met 4 years ago. I haven't had Hinge in basically 3 years and like 10 months, right? Like after a month of dating her, I was like, oh, why am I on these apps? Like, we're dating. Like, what are we doing here? So a lot of people forget that not all data is collectible. Like Meta knows a lot of stuff. A lot of it's instrumented. Like we can figure out time spent, but we can't figure it out if 2 people got married. And then also there's no, we don't have a time machine. We can't wait multiple years and no one at Meta is patient. So this is like one class of mistake people are making of like giving like lagging answers that take a long time or answers that they can't measure. Another example of something that's not really measurable is like, oh, did 2 people meet up for a date? Yeah. How am I supposed to know that? And then they're like, no, Nick, like they got location data. And I'm like, sure, that's true, but then I have to build an algorithm to see if 2 people met. And remember, we're just trying to get some like quick and dirty metrics to report to Zuck. We're not here to like build a whole did 2 people meet algorithm, right? Because we don't know if that metric is bad or if the algorithm was bad, right? Like we're on our big own research project, and that's its own big project. And then there's also those privacy implications of like, dude, so in order to collect this metric, we need both your location on at all times. And we have to be really good. And we have to have really granular stuff. This is too crazy. You know what I mean? So that's another mistake people do is they get too much into this like data science machine learning realm of like, oh my God, let's build an NLP solution and use AI to analyze your text messages to see if 2 people had chemistry. It's like, dude, that's kind of crazy. Like, dude, I'm not going to do that. We're data analysts, right? We're not building out NLP things custom for just a small little metric. You know what I mean? So that's another example of like a way that data people get these kind of open-ended questions wrong. They get like way too technical, way too quickly without understanding the foundations of the business. Now, Kristen, speaking of foundations of the business, most businesses run on profit and revenue, right? Like we're here to make a profit. Do you think we should be measuring profit for an app like this? Why or why not?
I mean, I assume we're going to because the product team is going to ask us for it. So we'll be
Right.
we'll need to be delivering that. But I
Yeah.
think like the true measure that we should really care about is whether or not people are actually using this app, whether or not they're making connections,
Right.
and even like, use something like Crazy Egg to see where are people clicking in the app, where are they
Right.
spending their time, that sort of stuff, because that's going to be more of a indicator of whether or not something
Yeah.
has staying power. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Kristen, I keep trying to trap Kristen, but Kristen is a senior person. She's got a lot of years of experience. She's not falling into my traps. Kristen, you nailed it. So I tried to bait her into saying, oh yeah, of course, every business is looking at profit and revenue. But remember, we told y'all, we only have a few months of data. We're looking for product market fit. We know that if we've got a good product, we can make money on it later, right? Like right now, we're in the early stages. Let's just figure out if the app's even working before we can figure out how much money there is to be made. Because there's nothing obvious about that this app is even good, right? And then secondly, another thing I tried to bait Kristen into is a lot of people assume the business model and they're like, oh, we'll look at like paying subscriptions and look at subscription revenue. So this is another mistake. Let's just generalize out for a second, that people forget to clarify these open-ended questions with their interviewer, right?
Yes.
And they just like jump into answering something and they forget to even ask them like, wait, what's the purpose of the app? What are we trying to do? How does the app make money? And Kristen, this is not just about this Facebook dating question, y'all. This is for most open-ended things, whether it's a take-home project, whether it's a Tableau dashboard you have to make as a take-home, whether it's like an open-ended case study you're doing, even if it's a consulting job, they'll ask you something open-ended. Even if it's a PM job, they'll ask you something open-ended. People just kind of jump in to trying to solve the problem without asking stuff. And it's not just for these open-ended things. Even for SQL interviews, they're like, what tables do we have, right? If we're just talking orally about something SQL related, they're like, sorry, what data do we have? What's the granularity? What's the grain? So Christian started trying to ask those questions, which could tell me her background and why she's been around the block with these data things. But a lot of people just assume like, oh yeah, we have these three tables, when it's not even fair like to assume any of these things. And a senior person knows how hard it is to get the right data at the right time at the right place. So they don't just assume we have all these metrics. They don't assume anything. They don't assume the business model. They like ask questions. They make good reasonings. So coming back, I went on this little tangent around asking questions. Coming back to this Facebook dating example, we didn't assume what kind of business model there is. And most people, when they make a mistake on this, they assume that it's just going to be like Hinge or Tinder. We're going to have a subscription. Now, Kristen, are you subscribed to Facebook?
Yes.
Wait, you are?
Wait, well, I have a login. I use it.
No, but I mean, I'm subscribed to Netflix. I pay $9.99. Like are you a subscribing payer to Facebook?
No, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Okay, it's only.
I also haven't really used any dating apps. I got married before they got cool.
No, I know. But you pay Netflix money, right? Probably Netflix.
Yes.
Right, I do too. I'm a paying subscriber for Netflix, so it's fine because you haven't been on the dating apps. You're happily married. That makes sense. All good. A lot of people just assume, okay, well, if Tinder and Hinge are subscription based, you pay $9.99 for Tinder Plus, Hinge Plus, that Facebook dating would be monetized the same way. And then I asked them back the question, so, I mean, is Facebook really good at subscriptions? Like, out of their 3 billion users, how many people are subscribed to Facebook? The answer is like basically nobody. Facebook makes $100 billion a year in revenue through ads. So this is another example of people are so stuck on, oh, Facebook dating, surely you'll pay for Tinder Plus, Facebook dating plus, and they forget, listen, we're not trying to collect revenue. And if we were, 99.9% chance we're ad supported, right? Like this is what Facebook does. You like Instagram stories? We'll put ads there. You like Facebook groups? We'll put an ad there. You want to send people DMs on WhatsApp or Messenger? Okay, we'll put in ads there from businesses who want to bid on showing up in your messages. This is the company that's king of ads. Yet when 90% of people who interview and do this mock interview question with me, they just assume the business model and they assume it wrong. And they forget about the company and our product and like what we're trying to do here, right? And this is like, yeah, at other companies that are king of subscriptions, they'll probably be subscription based. But you have to remember that no matter what the open-ended question is being asked, you have to think about your answers relative to the company and the product you're interviewing for, right? Profits correct at most companies, but here on a beta test, quite not important. Subscriptions are quite a logical thing for a dating app, but at an ad-supported company where everything is ads, isn't quite logical. So these are just some examples of common mistakes I've seen people make on these open-ended things. It's hard to really bucket them, but there's just so many different mistakes. And the funny thing, Kristen, is people say, oh, it's open-ended, there's no right or wrong answer, or it's open-ended, there's no way to prepare. And that's basically the whole reason we wrote the book, Ace the Data Science Interview. And we have the chapter 10, which is all about product metrics and product analytics and product sense. It's all on how do you kind of create these kind of frameworks or mental models to kind of go through these open-ended questions and not make these really common mistakes that keep coming up for data analytics and data science interviews.
That was amazing. This is probably the most deep, thorough example I've heard of, like the open-ended questions, and then even your response too about how quickly people respond to SQL questions. That's not something that I've heard somebody else say. I'm also, myself, probably not the fastest responder in a tech interview. I'm not going to be the quickest, but I can do it. But I had never, obviously when I go in, I want to be able to answer the question that's asked of me, but I hadn't thought about the speed. And people are looking across just so many different interviewees. Do you think that tech interviews are even as prevalent as they were 5 years ago? And so you mentioned a lot about, Facebook, Anthropic. So you've got like some, startups. We've got like the, sexy FANG guys. What about the, majority of, what the rest of everyone is doing? Do you think that they're still doing them as frequently?
So definitely your more average companies are not going as deep on some of these interview questions. That's totally true. But compared to 5 years ago, they are. Because this, 5 years ago, it was a little bit harder to test people on SQL. Now it's easy to spin up these kind of in-browser tests to test you on SQL. 5 years ago, they would have brought you on site and asked you to whiteboard a bunch of questions or just gotten to know you. Today, they go on Zoom and just, they have to be a little bit stricter because they're talking to people from all over the world. And 5 years ago, maybe you got lesser applications, but now people are using AI to submit like thousands of applications and spam LinkedIn. So companies have really had to respond to that and have a little bit more stringent quality control because now they can interview anyone and hire anybody and they have thousands of people applying. So I have seen companies move towards being a little bit more technical. Another piece I want to say is, though, you're right, though. Most companies, the average company is not sitting there and grinding you on SQL, but they are still asking you things like, hey, what does a like do in SQL? Like, how do you use like? Sure, you don't have to like write code for it, but you still have to like have that at the front of your head and like be able to respond to that. So it's still reflective of your ability to know SQL and spit out SQL is to be able to talk about stuff like that. People ask a classic question for the last 10, 15 years. Difference between where versus having in SQL. That's another like classic one. People will ask about joins, left join versus inner join versus outer join. So even if companies aren't going hardcore, you will still hear companies, call you up or go on Zoom and just ask you these kind of questions, which are still reflective of your ability to practice, right? Because if you just learned SQL 6 months ago for a week or two, it's not going to be as salient as, hey, you know what, you were writing some queries as recently as 2 weeks ago, trying to solve a trickier problem that required you to know the difference between the joins.
No, that makes a lot of sense to me. And actually, 7 years ago, I remember, and I think it was less stressful. I think I would have said that the technical interview was one of my favorite parts because I knew that it was going to be on site and it was only going to be about 40 minutes. So you could only theoretically ask me so many questions. And now that you can do it from home, there's just more opportunity. I was on a whiteboard, right? Like it was completely different.
If you're on a whiteboard, you're not going to have to write code that can run because you're just writing it by hand. And you're like more talking about your high level thoughts. And now companies, because it's all remote, hey, I'll give you a take home project for a week. You solve it, great. You don't solve it, no loss to me. I've got 100 other people I just sent the same project to. It's just, I just attach it and you have to do it. So it is a mess. And the bar has raised. But that's like the evolution of any industry. Like things get more legit. Maybe 200 years ago, you could have been a doctor and just because you knew some stuff and you read a book, and now we have all this licensing and everything. And our field doesn't have like formal licensing, or you don't have to have XYZ degree or XYZ certificate to break in, which is pretty good. I like that about us. It's skills driven.
Yep.
But because we don't have that kind of licensure, like there's no exact thing you have to do to get a job, the caveat or the kind of trade-off is, okay, then during the interview process, we're going to reassess those skills because we can't trust your degree or your certificate or your boot camp. Like it's nice to have, and it's a great step to learn. It's a great way to learn, but it's not necessarily the end all be all for getting that job and just like walking right in the way that a doctor can walk into a hospital and say, hey, I'm an MD, I'm a doctor. And people are like, okay, great, come on through.
Yeah. Right. And so how important would you say storytelling is in answering these questions?
So storytelling, not so important for a SQL interview, but let's go into behavioral interviews because that's absolutely key there. And you asked me, we started this whole conversation with, what are some mistakes you see, Nick, in interviewing? And I went on this whole thing about technical interviewing, open-ended stuff, SQL, but a big source of mistakes that people are making are in the behavioral interviews. And Kristen, like that so disappoints me because I'm like, it shouldn't be hard. You know what I mean? It like SQL is hard, or I see some complicated math, like that's hard. Talking about yourself shouldn't be hard. Yet from doing a lot of mock interviews with a lot of people, I see some very smart, capable, high IQ folks just completely bungle the behavioral side, the ability to tell stories. So I've had a lot more appreciation for that. And actually, that's something the book did not do well. The book has 11 chapters where like 7 of them are about technical interviewing for stats, SQL, ML, product sense, coding. Only 1 chapter is on behavioral interviews, but now I like come back to it and I'm like, whoa, like how do I like teach people this? It's something I'm struggling with. I think Maven has some resources out there too around some of these behavioral interview prep stuff and creating portfolios and being able to tell your story. So that's kind of cool. But I think a lot more work still needs to be done in this area because it is so weird to see people make mistakes. One of the biggest places that people make mistakes is right in that first 2 minutes of the interview. You say, hey, Kristen, nice to meet you. Before we get into things, tell me a little bit more about yourself. You see people with like, they're like deer, what's that phrase? Deer in headlights. Deer in headlights. They're like, what? Yep. Tell me about me? And I'm just like, how are you surprised that we're starting here? Every interview starts there. And I will do mock interviews with folks and they will still struggle on this. Kristen, have you seen this or experienced this too?
Yes. No, I've interviewed people where this has been obviously something that they were not prepared for. And also myself too, like over the years, I have prepared for this multiple times. I will have the elevator pitch and then I'll have the longer form version and I write out my answers to all my behavioral questions because it's a completely different skill. And if I don't prepare for it and somebody asks me, because I've gone on podcasts too, and I've been like, crap, how do I want to frame this? How do I want to position this? What are the best things to highlight?
Right. Yeah, no, it's and there's a game to it and people just don't even know that there's this level of thought put in. And even if you are someone senior like Kristen or, I've been around the block with interviewing, if given an opportunity to interview at a new company, I will sit there and think about it for 20, 30 minutes because your about me changes per position, per company. Yep. Sometimes I want to talk about how I was at Facebook. Other times I want to talk I was an entrepreneur. And if a company is looking at me to be a general, regular employee, I'm not going to talk about my book and Data Lemur and all these cool things I've been doing. I'm just going to talk about my individual contributor work. And then flip side, if someone's looking at me to be a manager, I'm going to talk about all the cool things I've done and how I've managed people. I'm not going to talk about how I was an IC and I killed it as an IC. I'm going to talk about how I've been managing and growing businesses and products. And so even for me, I have to change the pitch. Yet people just don't realize that. So one of the common mistakes, let's go a little bit more granular and talk about some of the mistakes I've seen. One is people, so they don't even know where to start their story. So sometimes they'll just start with like their current job, like, oh yeah, about myself. Here's what I've been doing at my current job. And I think like a good story, Kristen, you need a beginning, middle, and end, right? You can't just start at, oh yeah, the story starts 6 months ago. You got to give them a little bit about like where you came from, because a lot of people have really cool stories of how they got into data, right? You got to give them a little backstory, a little context. So I'll tell people that, and they'll be like, oh, when I was in preschool, I used to play with the numbered blocks. 1, 2, 3, I'd stack them up. I'm like, dude, yo, don't start with preschool, right? They're like, okay, great. We'll start with middle school. So those fractions, though, I was like, no, come on. Start somewhere that makes sense. So I tell a lot of people to say like, hey, talk about what you studied in school. And this is double bonus points for people who went to a great college or university. Like, it's okay to name drop. That's like where you say, hey, I studied this. And most people didn't study data science or data analytics. They studied econ or public health or statistics or math or CS, and say, hey, I studied CS, but I caught the bug for data analytics and data science by doing X, Y, and Z. Then you start with, hey, most recently at the company I've been at, I've been doing X, Y, and Z. But remember, I told you a good story has a past, it has a present, and it needs to have some kind of neat fairy tale ending or some kind of future element, okay? And that's another part people bungle. They get so busy into talking about what they're currently doing that they forget to tell you, why am I in front of you, Kristen? Why am I here looking for a new job? So you got to give them a little taste of the future. You got to give them that like ending, and you end with, so this is what I've been doing currently. And yeah, it's been amazing, but X, Y, and Z changes happened. And that's why I'm really excited to talk to you about blah, right? So I don't mean X, Y, and Z changes as layoffs. I mean X, Y, and Z changes as in, yeah, but I want to go back to B2B data science. I want to go work at a smaller company. I want to work at a bigger company. I want to work more into data engineering than data analytics, right? You got to say like what you've been doing is really cool, but I'm really excited to do data engineering at a healthcare company. And the wink and nod is you are a manager at a healthcare data engineering company, right? Or the wink and nod is, hey, big company has been really cool, but I want to get back to my startup roots and kind of work more on analytics problems that are consumer facing. And the wink and nod is, hey, I'm talking to like a direct to consumer startup that needs analytics done on helping sell more makeup goods to people. And that's definitely not B2B, and that's definitely smaller and leaner and a lot more agile. And that's kind of like the wink and nod. So this is an example of how people just have their boring old about me pitch. And there's just so many levels to the game that I, as a technical person, would have never imagined. 5, 6, 7 years ago, I was not thinking this hard. But now I've gone through this evolution as an author and a writer and thinking about knowing your audience. And I've seen, wow, I've been getting it wrong. Most people from engineering and data and math and econ worlds are getting it wrong. And there is an art to doing better here.
And do you have an example for if somebody is brand new to analytics, but they've been studying for a while? How did they want to think about positioning their elevator pitch?
Yeah, so it's definitely tougher, but this is where having good portfolio projects, certifications, having done something really helps. And done something doesn't mean for an employer in a paid capacity as a full-time employee for years. It just means having done something. So even if it's on your own for fun, you're building out Power BI or Tableau dashboards that you can share. Or even if on your own, you've been looking at data from Kaggle and making, competing in Kaggle competitions, or on your own, practicing SQL on Maven or Data Lemur, like that's still something you can bring up. So you bring it up to say, hey, look, I had my career in X. I went to school for Y, but most recently I've been like grinding SQL. I've been having a lot of fun analyzing this open source data set, building up this project. I could show you later, but it's been really cool. And it's all about data visualization of healthcare data. And that's kind of why I'm really excited to talk to you, because you guys do a lot of data visualization, and you're Aetna, you're CVS Healthcare, you're Walgreens. And, I saw that the job requires a lot of data visualization and Excel work and SQL. So yeah, I'm really excited to chat through today's opportunity, and you just tailor it back in. So it's okay. You don't have to have years of work experience to still tell your story in this kind of format.
Awesome. And so you mentioned portfolio projects. I know you had a really cool project on hip hop data on
Yeah.
Spotify. Could you tell us a little bit about that and, really importantly, how this helped you, how it resonated with hiring managers?
Yeah. So in college, I saw my friends play fantasy football, where you get points based on real world performance of NFL players. So I saw them able to collect points and make bets on who would win and who's a good football player and who's not. And I loved music. I loved hip hop music. I used to DJ, and I thought I had really good musical taste. I thought my taste was actually better than other people's taste.
I mean,
And
me too.
and like yeah, and did you just say me too?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a human thing, right? You have ego to say no. But Kristen, for real, trust me, bro. I've got good taste. So no, trust me, bro, is not going to work. So I wanted to prove that I had better musical taste, that I'm a good DJ, that I can spot up and coming trends. So I made the site called Rapstock.io, which is kind of like fantasy football, but for music. So instead of trading football players and betting on what football teams and football players would do well, I made a site where it allowed you to kind of bet on the performance of musical artists. I'd use data from Spotify's API to kind of price each artist, and then I'd allow you to kind of long or short an artist. So kind of like the stock market where you can kind of bet, hey, is NVIDIA gonna go up or down? You can long or short it. I made a similar game where I could long Drake because I think Drake's been unfairly clowned on, and I could short Kendrick Lamar. I think he's a one-hit wonder. Everyone loves him, but I don't think he's a great artist. I think, 2 years from now, he's not going to be as successful. So I could, on Rapstock, long Drake and short Kendrick Lamar. So I built this in my dorm room to kind of quantify and prove my ability to spot trends and let people like you, Kristen, also kind of compete to see who could predict things better, who could predict who's going to be more popular on music. So I built this site out, and I grew it to about 2,000 monthly active users. But one huge problem I kept having when I was building the site was users would sign up, make a few trades, and then churn out. So they wouldn't retain. And this site doesn't work if you make a few trades and you just leave. I need you to keep coming back, making new trades. Like I wanted you to check in on this site. So that kind of got me into this field of growth engineering, growth analytics, which is this kind of combo of marketing, A/B testing, statistics, software engineering. It's all about kind of thinking about how do we grow a site, how do we grow retention, how do we grow usage through a very data-driven way, where you kind of collect a lot of data, you have really good metrics, and you get really rigorous and numerical around, like, why is our site working, why is it not, what's the drop-off between each step of the sign-up process, can we run an A/B test or try two different things to see what works better, what increases retention. So it got me interested in this field of growth engineering, growth analytics, and it was really cool. And I used those tactics to get to 2,000 monthly active users. So when I was graduating college and I got to interview with Meta, and they asked me, well, it was Facebook back at the time, hey, why do you want to work at Facebook? Most other people said, oh, I heard they pay well, or my grandma uses Facebook. But I got to tell them the story of, listen, Facebook is the king of data-driven growth. Everything is instrumented there. They A/B test everything. They're maniacal. They collect all data about everybody, and they test everything. So I was like, listen, I already like growth. I already like growth engineering. I already like using data to grow consumer products. I'm doing that from my dorm room. Mm-hmm. I want to do it at a bigger scale. So please hire me. And low key, if you don't hire me, that's fine. I'm already using those same skills on my own. I'll figure it out. So this almost kind of like attitude of like, it's not the attitude they hired me for. It's more just like, listen, I'm not trying to promise you that I'll be a good employee. I'm here doing the work already on my own without anyone's permission, just at a smaller scale. I'm already writing SQL queries, looking at data, running A/B tests. So why don't you guys hire me to do the same thing at a bigger scale? And that's a very convincing story in a world where most people just don't build anything or have nothing to demonstrate, have nothing to show. So that is kind of a big part of why I got to work at Facebook and Facebook's growth engineering team. Now, mind you, I still have to ace the technical interview process, right? Like, that's a great story. I still have to put out and do a lot of good technical work for them throughout the interview process to get the offer. But that story is what allowed me to get those interviews in the first place. And Kristen, I didn't just tell the story to Facebook. I told it to Uber, Airbnb, and Snapchat because they
Yes.
also have growth engineering teams. They also use data to help people book more stays, book more trips on Uber, or send more snaps. They're also doing the same kind of work. So I was able to take that story and tell it to a few other companies. But Kristen, I didn't just tell it to those companies either. I told it to Apple. See, Apple is the biggest consumer brand in the world. They build for people. So I told Apple, listen, I want to work in consumer technology. I want to build consumer products. Look at me. I'm not here building B2B SaaS. I'm not doing some boring stuff. I'm not here to help people doing healthcare stuff. That's boring. I'm here to build cool things for cool people, which is kind of what Apple's trying to do too, right? So what did I tell Spotify? Kristen, would you want to work at Spotify one day, maybe?
I actually interviewed for Spotify,
Okay.
and the only way that I was really using Spotify was to listen. At the time, my daughter was, 3, and so we were listening to nursery rhymes, and I'm in an interview. I didn't get the job, but they were like, wow, we are so impressed with your ability to answer these questions based on the fact that you know so little about the product.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. We talk about that in the book a lot. You got to know the product to interview well. Because that's my angle for them. Like, hey, listen, Spotify. Everybody else says Spotify is their dream company. Oh, most people love music. No one is out here being like, dude, I hate music. Like, get that help. Most people listen to music and they're like, yeah, that would be really cool. But the thing is, my story was, look, I'm using data from your API already. I used to be a DJ. Like, everyone else says they like music, but I literally can prove to you that I'm using your data. I understand how your site's set up. I have these ideas. I'm doing cool things with data and music and literally Spotify data. And that's like a very compelling story for them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's like actually showing, hey, I know what you guys do. I like what you guys do. I've looked at your API documentation. Like, that's that next level type of knowledge, which is how you get these kind of interviews or make a good impression, right? Because Kristen, it's great that they're like, wow, you're so smart because you answered it well without knowing about the product. Imagine you'd answered really well and you knew a lot about the product and you were a
job at
DJ,
Spotify.
and you have a job at Spotify. I mean, that's what it takes, right? So this is what I mean by just one really good portfolio project can really open up a lot of doors. And that project doesn't have to be commercially viable. It's not like I made much money on Data Lemur, on Rapstock. And it's also not like Uber, the transportation logistics company, was like, wow, you analyzed Drake. That is super important for us here at Uber, right? Like, it's still a pet project. It's just that ability to talk about it, show it, and prove to people that you've done work. That's what makes the difference between someone who's just okay or kind of knows data, and then another person who's clearly passionate about it and can prove to hiring managers that they've got the skills that are being requested. Like, that's the gap.
Yep. And you can use that one project to show that passion again and again and again. Because the same thing, I have a couple of projects that are just sort of my all-stars. And at this point, I did them a couple years ago. But if I need to talk to somebody about my work, it's going to be those same projects that have impressed people before that I'm going to use to impress people later. Because not everything's a winner.
Exactly. And Kristen, I mean, Rapstock was like 10 years ago for me at this point. And I'm still talking about it here in 2025. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you just need one good project done and deployed. Deployed means people should be able to see it. Having it in a GitHub repo isn't good enough. And deployed doesn't 100%. Mean and deployed doesn't mean you have to be this like DevOps guru or anything. Power BI has public Power BI dashboards you can put out. Tableau has public Tableau. You can write SQL and put it up as a markdown file on GitHub, or you can show off your work. You can write up a write-up about what you did or what you analyzed and put it on Medium or put it up on your own site, put it on Webflow, like write about it and put it on LinkedIn. Like, you don't even need your own custom site or URL or anything. Take a video, take a photo. Just show people you've done something, because most people just don't have that level of, project.
Well, because inbound is always better than outbound too. If you post something on LinkedIn and somebody comes into your DMs inbound,
that's huge.
Power dynamic is so different. And I don't know if the word power dynamic is rightly placed there, but it's like,
I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. And even if you don't get inbound folks, you now have something to show people when you go outbound and you write to the recruiter and say, hey, there's a really cool data visualization job that you just opened up. I think I'm a great fit. You can check out this cool visualization I just made of this open source data set. It's pretty cool. Play around with it. It's interactive. By the way, I've attached my resume. Would love to chat more about the opportunity. Great. That's perfect. Like, and no, even a recruiter who's not technical can click, public.tableau.com/
Yes.
KristenKare_Instacart analytics and be like, oh, okay, great. You looked at Instacart grocery orders and looked at what sells better, Coke or Pepsi. You don't have to be a genius to be like, oh, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a genius to be like, oh, this is Tableau. And I saw in the job rec, they need Tableau and data visualization. And it says right at the top that first they did data cleaning in SQL to clean the data before they put it into Tableau. Okay, great. Even if you don't prove that, the recruiter's like, okay, great. Well, the Tableau dashboard works and they said they did this. So, okay, great. Which is 99% better than people just being like, oh yeah, I know SQL with like no context, no usage, no anything.
No, 100%. And you do want it to be that simple. You want to serve it on a platter. You want somebody to just click a link and see results.
Seeing is believing.
They have to go through more steps. They may not get there and they will miss your work. So there are now 2 people in the chat who have said, so Arsene was the first one to say, you have to re-invite Nick.
Absolutely.
And, I'm going to have to, because there was so many more questions I would have loved to ask you, but it is time to go over to the Q&A.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right. We will do that. All right. So Miguel asked, how do you answer, why are you changing your current job if the reason is really burnout?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was burnt out. I would just say, hey, just you always got to keep things light and positive and just say, hey, listen, I think this rule is pretty cool for other reasons, and tell them the reasons. If you're at a small startup getting burned out, just say, hey, I miss working at a bigger company with a bigger impact and with a lot more data access and a lot more support resources. At the smaller company, I had to wear a lot of hats, and that was really fun to like learn a lot of different things. But I think at a bigger company, I get to like laser focus on one thing, right? Because wink, wink, the startup was burning you out, making you do 7 jobs in one go. Bigger company's probably not going to have you do that, right? So there's a way to spin these things, But you don't want to say, I'm burnt out, so that first I'm going to treat your job as a vacation because I'm burnt out. Like you don't want to project that message ever.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I've spent so much time figuring out the framing for this isn't very positive, but how am I going to make it positive? Emilio has asked, what advice do you have for someone who's just starting out in data analytics and looking to build a portfolio while they're still in university?
So, yeah, the beauty of that Tableau Power BI example I gave you is these are like no code or low code tools. You don't have to have a PhD in machine learning to set up some of these visualizations. So I would say someone like that in college, start simple and start somewhere, because you can make a good project with just Excel. And now if you don't know Excel, then I can't help you. Then you got to go learn through Maven, go learn your Excel skills, get somewhat good at some technology or work on data visualization. But I mean to say the bar isn't make a startup that gets thousands in funding or do hardcore neural networks, machine learning. That's not where the bar is at. Even with Excel, Tableau, basic SQL, we can get somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're an analyst and you can just demonstrate that you understand dashboarding best practices and you type up your insights, it doesn't really matter the tool you use as long as you're demonstrating. Anthony asked, how do you balance clarifying questions with an interviewer without appearing inexperienced? Is it better to assume or ask?
So in these interviews, it's like a back and forth, it's conversational. So it's okay to start and ask 1 or 2 questions. And then you can always ask, if you think you're asking too many, you can always say, okay, great, I think I have enough context. Would you like me to start answering some metrics, or maybe should I clarify some more? And they'd usually be like, no, I think you're good to go. It's okay. You just have to keep it conversational. And yes, don't hear me say this as if like you need to know every detail about Facebook dating and the product to start answering. And you can always ask questions as you go along. And you can always remember, oh yeah, by the way, Revenue is a great metric. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. What's the business model, or what are we trying to do? And so if you clarify it later, that's also okay. Because listen, this is like an art, not a science. Like there's no exact time to ask every clarifying question. And there is a world where you can annoy them and ask them like 11 and be like, what are you trying to do here? Right. So you got to feel it out. And that's what takes some practice and some,
Finesse. Arsene asked, to be confident in SQL interview for data analyst position, could you please share the concepts we should master before?
Yeah. So I think I'm not here to overly plug Data Lemur type stuff, but we have a free SQL tutorial that covers 20 or 30 concepts that you will need. But it's for these tougher interviews, it's like less about knowing the syntax and more about problem solving with those things. And that comes through practice. So one of the best ways to just know what's needed is to practice 5, 10, 15 questions on a site like Data Lemur or on Maven. I know Maven has a lot of good SQL resources too. And that will itself tell you what you need to know, right? Because if you practice 5 or 10 easy questions, they're not going to pull out some crazy command that you never see. That's what makes these intro practice questions quite easy and intro. So yeah, it's not meant to like, these companies don't try to pull out concepts that are obscure. They're just trying to make sure you got the basics of joins, that you know how to filter data with where correctly. And then if you're a little bit more advanced in your analytics career, make sure you understand your window functions so you can come up with those rolling averages. But yeah, those are some of the just basic main questions that they're asking and concepts they're asking.
Awesome. That's what I would say as well. Kevin asked, how can I show off my portfolio projects in an interview? What's the best way to position that?
Perfect. So first off, have it for these Zoom interviews, have it as a tab ready to go. Make sure you have sharing permissions. Make sure your Zoom or whatnot's updated, because sometimes you get hit with that, oh, Chrome doesn't have access to screen share. So you want it to be effortless, where it's like, oh, data visualization. Speaking of Mr. or Mrs. Recruiter, do you mind if I share my screen? I actually have a data visualization I can show you. It's pulled up right here. No interviewer, no hiring manager or recruiter is going to be like, sorry, we don't have time. If you frame it like, hey, can I just pull it up real quick? They're going to be happy with it. So what I would do is have a few of the things I want to show off in a tab or two already live. And then at the end of the interview, when you say, hey, thanks for interviewing me. By the way, if you want to poke around on my Tableau dashboard, here's the link. So you remind them, hey, the thing I showed you, here's a link to it. Because you know what? For that first or second round interview with the recruiter, they often circle back with the hiring manager. So then they forward that message. Hey, just had a good chat with Nick. By the way, see his dashboard. It's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. So now someone who hasn't even interviewed you starts to get context on, oh, this is someone who's done something. But the key in all this, I tell you, is have it showable and displayable, y'all. It is free these days. You can set up free websites. Webflow is free, no code. We're in 2025. We run out of excuses for, oh, sorry, I can't show you. It's not deployed. It's sitting there. You've got to have something to show.
100%. I will literally have a Google Doc, just to keep it real simple. I will have a Google Doc open on my second monitor with the links I might want to share. Yeah. And then at the appropriate time, I got it. I got it for you. It's right here.
Yep. And make it something visual, right? So even if you wrote up some big analysis, hey, y'all, I looked at inflation data and tried to understand, are we over or understating inflation? That might be like a complicated write-up, but maybe have a link to that one image you want to share. Right, because a picture tells 1,000 words, right? Or hey, I'm really interested in computer vision and machine learning. I built a self-driving car. Have that 30-second Instagram reel or YouTube video or photo or GIF of the car driving around. Hey, for context, Mr. or Miss Interviewer, I'm really into computer vision. I actually built this. You want to see it real quick of it driving around? And then you can talk about all the technical details. But like someone seeing you have a little car or having a dashboard or having a beautiful infographic that you built in Canva or something that just displays the data beautifully and tells a story. I mean, that's worth something. So again, you can do the analysis in Excel and build it in Canva and still get somewhere somehow.
All right. Awesome. And so we do need to wrap it up. So the last couple questions, hold on. I want to share your book again, obviously, so people can see that.
Yeah, I can hold it up. It's called Ace the Data Science Interview. Check it out. It's on Amazon. It's pretty good, I think. And then I also run Data Lemur. You can go practice SQL interviews there, practice Python, look at some SQL there. And then, yeah, and I'm also a big fan of the stuff Maven's been putting out. So there's that. Maven's got a really big library of resources. Data Lemur's kind of just been focused mostly on SQL, but Maven, you'll see a lot more things on there. And then, yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn, Twitter. I post memes. I posted a meme today. So
that was going to be my next question was where can people find and follow you? So perfect. You're so in front of it. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining us today.
Absolutely.
I think, there was multiple people in there saying I have to have you back. So
yeah,
you were
absolutely.
a big hit. I would love to just go through a couple of the housekeeping notes again and remind people that we have the Data Literacy Foundations course and the ChatGPT for Data Analytics is free. Thank you, everyone, so much for coming. I hope you have an amazing day. I know I had an amazing time talking to Nick, and I hope to see you guys next week. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all for having me. And the chat's been active. I love to see y'all. Alexander, Shannon, Christy, Harris. Thank you for all the shout outs. Shrishti, this is great. Arsene, this is great. So thank you all for having me and asking the questions. And thanks, Anthony. Yes.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
Cool.